Welcome to Starlight Sci-Fi, where we explore the unknown, the impossible, and the stories that push humanity beyond the stars. If you love thrilling sci-fi adventures, make sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more. Now, let's begin. For centuries, the Rylharr Dominion had dominated the stars. Their warriors were legends, their hunts an unstoppable force. When intelligence reports revealed a primitive, resource-rich world called Earth, the Dominion sent their most feared hunters to claim it. They expected an easy victory. Instead, Earth buried them. The Rylharr Dominion had spent centuries perfecting the art of war. Their empire stretched across countless systems. Their warriors feared on every world they touched. Entire civilizations had crumbled before them, their prey falling in silent, calculated hunts that left no survivors. They were not conquerors who waged open war. They were predators. They struck from the shadows, dissecting the weaknesses of their prey until their dominance was unquestioned. Earth was supposed to be no different. The mission was simple. A scouting fleet had detected the planet from deep space surveys, an oxygen-rich world teeming with biological life, its dominant species an upright, soft-skinned, tool-dependent race. The humans had spread across the globe, constructing crude metal cities, but they lacked natural defenses. No claws, no fangs, no armor, no bioshields. Their weapons were primitive by Dominion standards, reliant on solid projectiles and basic energy output. The Rylharr commanders saw no challenge, no threat, no honor to be earned in the hunt. And yet, the reports intrigued them. Earth's biodiversity was staggering, its ecosystems varied and dense. Every continent brimmed with unique and highly adapted life forms, many capable of extreme survival. A planet of such raw, untamed energy had never been encountered before. The Dominion's leadership saw an opportunity, a true test of their warriors. If their finest hunters could master this world, they would prove themselves the deadliest force in the galaxy. So they sent their best. A select group of Rylharr hunters descended in the dead of night, their ships cloaked, their approach unnoticed. Unlike primitive war fleets that announced their arrival with fire and noise, the Rylharr preferred silence. They did not conquer through brute force, but through precision. Each warrior moved like a phantom, their armor blending with the environment, their enhanced senses mapping the terrain in real time. The plan was to observe first, study their prey, understand how the humans functioned, how they responded to threats. Then, they would strike. They fanned out across the planet, deploying in small teams across the most remote and challenging regions. Dense jungles, frozen tundras, scorching deserts. The hunt would begin in isolation where humans were fewer, where they could be studied without interference. A slow, methodical extermination would follow, stripping Earth of its defenders before the Dominion claimed it as their own. The hunters stalked through the Amazon rainforest, their movements precise, their technology scanning for signs of human life. They moved through the Siberian ice fields, undeterred by the freezing winds. They crossed the vast dunes of the Sahara, seeing nothing but endless sand and heat. They watched from the shadows of mountains, unseen, unstoppable. Everything was proceeding as planned. The humans had no idea they were being observed. No alarms were raised, no threats detected. It should have been easy. And yet something was wrong. The first Rylharr vanished within hours, then another, and another. There were no battles, no gunfire, no traces of their bodies. The greatest hunters in the galaxy had just stepped into a world that had spent millions of years perfecting the art of survival. And Earth had already begun to fight back. The first disappearance was dismissed as an accident. A single locator beacon had activated deep in the Amazon rainforest, a distress signal pulsing for mere seconds before cutting to static. The hunter assigned to that region, a veteran of 100 planetary campaigns, was unreachable. His armor's tracking signature, designed to transmit even through electromagnetic interference, simply ceased to exist. His squad mates marked him as lost and continued their hunt. Then the second went missing. This time it was in the Siberian tundra. A warrior stationed in the frozen wastelands sent a brief transmission back to his hunting party. His voice was garbled, distorted, the words lost in an ocean of static. Then, a scream. Short, clipped, not of pain but of something far worse, a sound that had no place in the throat of an apex predator. By the time the others responded, he was gone, his signal erased, his body nowhere to be found. Within hours, the pattern repeated. One hunter disappeared in the depths of the Congo, another along the swamps of the Everglades, a third in the Namib Desert, his final log filled with unreadable data. Each loss was quick, silent, devoid of the familiar signs of battle. There were no energy burns, no projectiles, no combat damage to indicate a fight had taken place. There were only disappearances. The remaining warriors regrouped, linking their tactical networks in a desperate attempt to analyze the pattern. Their technology, refined over centuries, scanned for threats, but nothing showed. No enemy forces, no human military, no detected weapons. Yet their numbers continued to drop. Panic spread through the hunting party. It was foreign, unfamiliar, an emotion they had never experienced on any other world. The Rylharr were predators, creatures of absolute control. Their hunts were calculated, their strategies flawless. Fear was something lesser beings felt, and yet here, on this world, they were afraid. The jungle swallowed them whole without a sound. The ice fields reduced them to nothing without a trace. The deserts devoured them, leaving no bones, no evidence of their existence. They had never faced an enemy they could not see. Some believed the humans had discovered them, that their prey was not as primitive as it seemed. But there was no evidence. No sudden military activity, no shifts in global communication patterns, nothing to indicate that Earth's inhabitants were aware of their presence. It wasn't humans killing them. It was the planet itself. Each region held its own silent executioners. In the tropics, unseen parasites burrowed beneath their armored skin, spreading infections their immune systems had never encountered. In the swamps, the water they drank held microscopic predators that multiplied within hours, shutting down their bodies from the inside. In the deserts, the relentless heat stripped them of strength, dehydration setting in before they realized they were dying. The Rylharr had prepared for battle. They had trained for war, but they had never trained for this. This was not a hunt. This was an extinction. The Rylharr were warriors, their kind shaped by countless generations of battle. Their senses were razor-sharp, their instincts honed to detect the slightest movement, the faintest shift in the air. Their armor was designed to withstand planetary extremes, their immune systems fortified against foreign diseases. And yet they were dying. The survivors gathered in the ruins of their hunting party, their numbers dwindling far faster than they could comprehend. They activated every scanning tool at their disposal, thermal imaging, biosensors, atmospheric analyzers. They searched for signs of an enemy, a force that could be hunting them in return. But their scanners found nothing. There were no life forms closing in on them, no signs of an ambush. The planet remained quiet, indifferent, yet with each passing hour another warrior was lost. Something was hunting them, but it was not a creature, not a soldier, not anything they could fight. The first discovered the truth when his skin darkened beneath his armor, the veins beneath it turning black. He had been among the group deployed in the jungle, a silent observer of Earth's most vibrant ecosystem. His strength faded rapidly, his body convulsing as his blood thickened into sludge. His comrades tried to intervene, to extract whatever poison had taken hold, but there was nothing to extract. Something was inside him, too small to see, too numerous to fight. The jungle had claimed him from the inside out. Another collapsed in the mountains, his breathing rapid and uneven. His kind had survived on oxygen-thin worlds before, planets with brutal atmospheric conditions, yet here, on a planet that teemed with life, his lungs burned. The air he had inhaled was filled with microscopic invaders, pathogens beyond his species' ability to resist. He suffocated, not from lack of oxygen, but from the world's refusal to accept his presence. A third warrior, one of the few still unscathed, stood by a riverbank, trying to rehydrate after days of exhausting retreat. The water was clear, still, undisturbed, but as he drank, his body betrayed him. His throat seized, his limbs locked, his nerves sent signals of pain that made no sense. A single, harmless-looking organism had entered his bloodstream, a creature too small to see, yet efficient enough to shut down his nervous system within minutes. It was a quiet, effortless execution. Every breath they took was a risk. Every drop of water, every moment spent in this world was another opportunity for Earth to strip them down, to unravel them on a level their technology had never prepared them for. They had faced war. They had fought against beasts with fangs the size of swords, creatures that could crush starships with their bodies alone. But never had they faced a world that fought without teeth, without claws, without sound. The realization came too late. This was not a war, this was a natural order, and they did not belong. The Rylharr had always believed that strength decided survival. A species' dominance was measured by its claws, its intelligence, its ability to impose its will on others. Every world they had conquered had bent to this rule. Every creature that stood in their way had been cut down by their superior weapons and tactics. But Earth did not fight them. It did not need to. The planet had already perfected the art of killing over billions of years. It had no need for warriors, no grand defenses. Instead, it wielded a quiet arsenal, one made of venom, disease, and elements so small they could not be seen. And one by one the hunters fell. The jungle was the first to claim them. It whispered no warning before striking, its dangers invisible until it was too late. Tiny insects no larger than a grain of sand slipped through the microscopic gaps in their armor, carrying lethal pathogens their immune systems had never encountered. Some of the warriors lasted hours, others days, but all suffered the same fate: fevered convulsions, organ failure, and finally, stillness. The tundras were no kinder. The warriors stationed in the far north had laughed at the cold at first. Their armor was designed to regulate temperature, their bodies resistant to extremes. But Earth's ice fields did not kill with brute force. They killed with exhaustion. The air was dry, draining them faster than they realized. The freezing winds robbed them of warmth, not in great noticeable losses, but in a slow, creeping drain. They could not hunt in the endless white, could not see the dangers that lay beneath the snow. When they walked across frozen lakes, they never heard the ice cracking, until it was too late. The first fell through, his armor dragging him into the depths. The second tried to save him, only to be lost as well. The third watched, helpless, as the cold took him piece by piece, numbing his limbs, slowing his mind, until he simply collapsed and never moved again. The deserts, though scorching, were no less deadly. The heat bore down on them, relentless and unforgiving. The hunters assumed they could outlast it, that their endurance would carry them through. But Earth's deserts did not kill with heat alone. The air, so dry it sucked the moisture from their lungs, left them gasping for breath. The sand, shifting endlessly beneath them, concealed creatures that had evolved to strike in an instant, fangs laced with venom, waiting for the slightest mistake. Some of the warriors were found with their bodies bloated, poisoned by unseen bites. Others had simply collapsed from dehydration, their strength drained faster than they could replenish it. The planet was not their enemy, and yet it was defeating them effortlessly. The Rylharr were warriors. They had prepared for battle. But there was nothing to fight, nothing to kill. Earth did not need to lift a single weapon against them. It only needed time. And time was running out. The Rylharr had never known what it meant to be helpless. Every war they had fought, every species they had conquered, had been a demonstration of their superiority. When they hunted, they dictated the terms. They chose when to strike, how to kill, and when to leave no survivors. Their technology had given them mastery over countless worlds. Their biology had placed them above all others. But here, on Earth, none of it mattered. The planet did not care for their weapons. It did not acknowledge their experience. It did not fight them directly because it did not see them as a true threat. And that was the worst humiliation of all. With each passing day, their numbers dwindled further. No war cries, no battles, just absence. The strongest of their kind were being erased, not by an enemy's blade, but by a world that neither feared nor noticed them. The remaining warriors did what they could to survive. Their first instinct was to fight back. They tried to turn their technology against the invisible enemy, sealing their armor to prevent outside contamination. They filtered the air, sterilized the water, even burned sections of the jungle and surrounding areas to carve out a safe zone. It made no difference. What they couldn't see, they couldn't kill. The jungle did not care for fire. It regrew, stronger than before. The air itself was poisoned against them, filled with microscopic organisms that no amount of filtration could fully erase. The water, despite being purified, still carried dangers they did not understand. Each attempt to reclaim control only reminded them of how powerless they truly were. Some of them turned on each other, unable to comprehend the scale of their failure. Whispers of sabotage spread among the last few survivors. Maybe the humans were more advanced than they appeared. Maybe one of their own had been compromised, carrying some unknown toxin, spreading it unknowingly. One warrior, half mad with fever, accused his own squad mate of leading them into death. It did not end in argument. It ended in blood. The survivors who remained had long since abandoned the idea of hunting humans. The mission had changed from conquest to survival. They no longer sought to dominate this world, they only wanted to escape it. But escape was impossible. Their ships, once hidden in perfect cloaked silence, were now tombs. The pilots had been the first to die, infected before they even realized what was happening. The controls were still operational, but no one was left to use them. No one strong enough to fly. One of the last warriors made an attempt, dragging his failing body through the dense undergrowth toward the landing site. He was the strongest among them, but even he could not stop the slow breakdown of his body. By the time he reached the ship, he was already dead. The Rylharr did not belong here, and Earth was making sure they never would. The last of the Rylharr knew they were already dead. Survival was no longer a question. It was a countdown. A slow, inevitable decline that no amount of strategy or strength could prevent. Their bodies were failing, betrayed by unseen invaders, by air that corroded their lungs, by water that carried silent executioners. They had come to this world as predators. Now they were prey. The few still breathing had abandoned all semblance of discipline. Once they had moved in perfect formation, their every step measured, their every decision calculated. Now they staggered through the wilderness like wounded animals, their sleek armor caked with mud, their advanced weaponry useless against an enemy too small to see. They had tried to send a distress signal. It had been their last, desperate hope. But the signal was never received. Their ships, which had landed in carefully concealed locations, were no longer safe havens. Those who had retreated to them had only died faster, trapped in enclosed spaces with no way to escape the infections ravaging their bodies. The artificial air filtration had done nothing against the microscopic life that had already taken root inside their lungs, their bloodstreams. Their calls for rescue went unanswered, not because no one was listening, but because their kind had already deemed them lost. The Dominion would not waste resources retrieving failures, and the Rylharr had failed completely. The last warrior still standing knew this better than any of them. He had watched his squad mates fall one by one, their armor becoming their coffins, their bodies slumping lifelessly beneath the trees, beneath the ice, beneath the burning sun. He had felt the sickness creeping through his own veins, felt the weakness in his limbs, the tremors in his fingers. But worse than the sickness was the knowledge that Earth had won. Not by force, not by cunning, but by simply existing as it always had. The humans would never know they had been invaded. The Rylharr had been ghosts in the shadows, unseen, unheard, and now erased. No warnings would be given. No messages would be sent back to the Dominion. No one would ever know what had happened here. The last Rylharr warrior collapsed onto the forest floor, his breath ragged, his vision fading. Above him, the sky remained unchanged, the stars blinking coldly, indifferent to his fate. The planet had swallowed his kind without effort, without resistance. And it would remain untouched, waiting for the next fools who dared to challenge it. The hunt was over, and Earth had never even noticed. The Rylharr had come to Earth as conquerors. Now they were nothing but memories lost to an indifferent world. Their bodies, what remained of them, would never be found. Some lay buried beneath jungle undergrowth, their once impenetrable armor overtaken by vines claimed by insects and scavengers that had no concept of what they feasted upon. Others had been swallowed by the ice, trapped beneath shifting layers of permafrost, their existence erased with the next snowfall. The deserts had turned some into sun-bleached husks, their remains indistinguishable from the bones of countless creatures that had perished before them. Time would erase them completely. No human ever knew they had come. No governments raised alarms, no satellites tracked their silent invasion. The Rylharr had been hunters, their presence hidden from the world they sought to dominate. But they had underestimated Earth in ways they never could have imagined. It was not the humans who had bested them. It was the planet itself. Earth had spent billions of years perfecting the art of survival. It had endured extinction events, reshaped itself time and time again, bred creatures so perfectly adapted to their environments that they could outlast anything the universe threw at them. The Rylharr had spent generations conquering weak worlds, planets that had never needed to fight to survive. But Earth had never stopped fighting. Every microorganism, every parasite, every predator lurking in the unseen corners of the planet had been shaped by an endless war for existence. And when the Rylharr had set foot here, they had entered a battlefield they were never prepared for. Their disappearance would go unnoticed. Their absence would not be mourned. The Dominion, far away among the stars, would assume they had failed and move on. There would be no second invasion, no attempt to reclaim what had been lost. The Rylharr did not tolerate failure, and any world that had bested their best was not a world worth the risk of further losses. The files would be buried in military archives, labeled as an unexplained failure. The warriors who had been sent would be forgotten, their names erased from history, their legacies reduced to nothing. Meanwhile, Earth continued as it always had. The jungles remained vibrant and teeming with life, unaware of the battle they had won. The deserts stretched beneath the burning sun, unbothered by the deaths they had claimed. The frozen tundras howled with icy winds, unfeeling, untouched. The humans went about their lives, never knowing that an entire hunting party of the galaxy's most feared warriors had come for them and had been destroyed without a single shot fired in return. The Rylharr had come to conquer. Instead, they had become nothing more than another forgotten casualty of Earth's endless cycle of survival. And the planet remained undefeated. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more sci-fi adventures. Until next time, keep watching the stars.